I myself associated religiosity with this docile, placid kind of behavior that people do have. And that's not what I see Islam is all about. The similitude of you is the same similitude of a drug dealer. They don't like you that much. They don't care about you. If you died, they wouldn't care. The fact that he says something like that, Suleiman, shows that he doesn't feel threatened by me. I consider him to be a world-class speaker. Him and Yasir Qadhi. Yasir Qadhi's got some serious scholarship. Obviously, there's going to be problems. Everyone's going to say, well, he said this and she said this. Well, I've said things as well. They are clearly on that level for a reason. If I could press a button to either keep or remove them, I would press the button to keep every single one of them.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to another episode of the Ali Brothers podcast, the best part of the week for every one of you listening. Today,
it's not the best part of the week, it's the best part of their entire lives. I mean, you got a guest here that's
that's right.
of my stature and caliber.
Yes.
It's not the best part of the week at all.
Speaking about our guest, today we are in the presence of a champion. Yes. The heavyweight champion. Yeah, that's true, yeah. We're in the presence of the legend. It has been said that this person, many people, they love him. Some people, they hate him. Loved by most, hate by some. Everyone has an opinion of this individual. A master of all trades. And, of course, ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute pleasure to have the champ, the legend, and Mohammed Hijab is also with us. Welcome, brother, to the podcast. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. How are you? I didn't know you were hated by some, by the way.
Hated by many.
I'm hated by many, yeah.
Really?
Wait till we get to Waterford.
No way. No way.
We can start now, inshallah. So of those people...
Yeah, that's right.
There's a refutation for those,
Yes.
for those guys, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Brother Hijab just arrived from Pakistan, actually, the blessed land of Pakistan. So we wanted to welcome you back to Ireland. Alhamdulillah, we were in Trinity College yesterday for our event with the Muslim Students Association. So in terms of your trip in Pakistan, I just wanted to ask you, what were the highlights for you in terms of just your experience in the country itself? How did you find the environment? How did you find the food? You probably got sick during the trip as well, as is the case for all of us. Every time we go back, we have to get sick for a few days. So how's your experience in Pakistan?
Yeah, I got sick for a few days, but the country is actually quite a beautiful country. I mean, there's so much going on there. There's so many different people from different tribes. Lahore the old city has some really beautiful relics, and one of them is Bachai Masjid, actually. That was one of the highlights of the trip for me. It was a very short time because it was like a break that I had between lectures. I had a very stacked and back-to-back schedule, actually. But I went to Bachai Masjid, and it was one of the best masjids I've ever seen in my life. And if you look at the rankings of different people of like the best kind of architectural structures that exist in the world, usually they put Taj Mahal as number one. I mean, that is commonplace. If you look at those kind of enthusiasts, architectural enthusiasts, they put Taj Mahal as number one. And Taj Mahal and Bachai Masjid have very similar architectural continuities. Obviously, both of them were constructed in the Mughal period, and obviously they have the same kind of features in terms of the dome, in terms of the bricks, and all that kind of thing. But what I found quite surprising is that we don't know, as say for example tourists going into a place like Pakistan, of Bachai Masjid. We know about Hagia Sophia, we know about the Blue Mosque, we know about Alhambra in Spain. We know about these kinds of structures, you see. But this masjid, Bachai Masjid, is up there with the top masjids that not even just top masjids, top structures that have been produced by human beings on the planet Earth. And so something with such great significance, I think, should be marketed and upkept in a better way than it was. So that's one thing I would say. That Bachai Masjid was a surprise. The Mughal kind of the fortress next to it and stuff like that was very interesting. In addition, Karachi is quite similar to Cairo. I've made this point a few times. Islamabad is a very, very beautiful city. It was constructed bottom up in, I think, 1967. They got an international procurement for it. It's got this kind of Cape Town-esque vibe to it because you've got the mountains, and the mountains are connected to the city itself. And then you've got all this kind of like wildlife as well. I saw a few monkeys there. I heard there's few leopards and all this kind of thing. So it's definitely a very beautiful country, you know, especially if someone speaks Urdu and has, like, for example, Pakistani heritage. I would definitely make it a case to go to a place like Pakistan every year. Maybe even have 1 foot here, 1 foot there. It makes a lot of sense to have connections with a country like that.
Yeah. In a recent vlog that came out on your channel, when you were talking about your trip in Pakistan, you mentioned Islamabad, and you struck a similitude between Islamabad and other locations such as Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha, as places that people like to settle in outside of the West if they have a foothold in the West as well. So it's interesting, especially because there's such a big population within Pakistanis and within Urdu-speaking people, that Islamabad could be an option for us. Now, the issue is in terms of the politics, it's a very unstable environment, unfortunately, especially with the most recent elections. But in terms of a place to live, Islamabad, compared to the rest of Pakistan in particular, is something that is much more appropriate, and it's easier for us to adjust in a place like Islamabad compared to other cities in Pakistan.
That's right.
Yeah, I think in recent times as well, a lot has been done for tourism in Pakistan. It's mainly focused though in the north, you know, in the northern regions, in the
Beautiful mountains. And
yeah,
this kind of thing.
it's absolutely stunning over there, and it was really only in recent years where this became a bit more popular, through the online vlogs and all sorts of tourists going there, which is really amazing to see. Islamabad as well has blown up when it comes to with regards to tourism, so it's great. But like you said, a lot more has to be done regarding, especially when it comes to, you see that there's so many Muslims around the world, and they see a place like Turkey that they can go to and they can holiday and they can feel comfortable there, obviously. Pakistan, I feel like, if they really work on themselves, they can really find themselves to be one of those tourist spots as well for the Muslims. And not just for Muslims, but I would say Muslims in particular. And I think they're working on that now. Obviously, because, like Hassan mentioned, because of politics, there's a lot of instability, which is a real shame, because there's so much beauty. There's so many, you've met the people. There's so many resources as well, and this is really a shame that we don't have our act together in that regard. But yeah, inshallah, in the future, hopefully, one day this could be.
Inshallah. In terms of Dawah in particular, of course, you are, I would say, one of the biggest names in the English-speaking Dawah sphere on the online situation of Dawah. One of the first, or probably the main debate that was a turning point in my own personal life was the debate that you had with David Wood. That was, given the context of that situation, it was a very monumental debate, not only for myself, I feel, but for many Muslims, young Muslims around the world, in the English-speaking world, and pretty much around the world. And at that point, the main message that it taught me was that we don't have to be ashamed about our religion, that we can be confident, we should be confident, and rather the other side, whichever side are bringing another way of life, another way that they're bringing to the table, Islam stands against that like nothing else. That we don't have anything to explain for ourselves. We have logic, we have the truth on our side in that sense. And in that debate, especially when it comes to that particular opponent, to David Wood, who was a career Islamophobe, a person who really brought those kind of doubts, and it's not particular for him, and I feel awkward even mentioning his name in this situation, but these kind of people, they bring those seeds of doubt within Muslims. There was recently a video of yourself that was going on one of these Islamophobic YouTube channels, and he was talking about the age of Aisha radiallahu anha, and actually I believe the age of marriage, and you're refuting a Quranist in that situation. The clip that was made out of that was completely out of context, and it gave a completely different situation of the matter that was being spoken about. It's so dishonest. But that particular podcast, and I wanted to bring you back to that particular debate actually, how did you find yourself in that situation, and what was the feedback that you got from that particular debate?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it was monumental and it was a turning point. I do still think that this debate was the most important thing that probably happened to me in the public sphere. More so even than the recent Piers Morgan discussions, though there's a case to be made for the first appearance I had with Piers Morgan being a contender for that top spot. So it's just at that particular time, there was a context, there was a whole personal context with that person. I had watched his videos when I was young, as a teenager, and I had wanted to debate this guy since I was a teenager. And so I actually emailed him when I was about 16 years old or something like that. Yeah, so it was a thing that, was boiling and simmering inside of me. And I got the opportunity, and when I got the opportunity, I took it with my claws, if you like. So it definitely was a monumental debate. It completely changed the trajectory of my entire life. And I'm grateful to Allah for that debate. It was probably one of the best moments in my entire life, actually. Not just public moments, actual moments. It's up there in the top 3, maybe. So whereas with Piers Morgan discussion, when I came out of there, I still felt very bad because of what was going on in Palestine. So it wasn't a pure feeling of euphoria and ecstasy or achievement, because it was still like, okay, well, this was good, but it's not solving the problem. Still there are people being killed in Palestine. So it was ambivalence and confliction that I felt afterwards, rather than a pure feeling of achievement. So these are the two aspects I would think about. I would think about the impact it's had, and also the feeling, how I felt. And in both cases, you could make the argument that the David Wood debate was the most important thing that happened in my life.
Yeah, in terms of the topic of discussion when it comes to the first appearance on Piers Morgan, of course, being on Palestine and the issues going on there, that's of course specific to the context and the historical context of what's going on there at the moment. When it comes to the debate itself, that was showing the veracity of Islam, the strength of Islam to the youth, and that is something that brings Islam as an ideology, as a way of life, and it props people up. It gives people the impression that we don't have to be humble or submissive towards other people. We can stand up with confidence. We can walk around with confidence, not arrogance. That's a different issue. We can walk around confidently. We don't have anything to explain to ourselves, and that it breeds a whole generation and generations of Muslims who are confident about their religion, and they can spread that confidence and that belief throughout their families and their friends and circles around the world. So from that perspective, in terms of the topic, that is something that is also important to consider.
I think just on that, we were talking about this at dinner last night, but I think for me as well, when I saw someone like yourself, kind of the way you were debating, and people would say you might have a brash style, or the way you really come out attacking. It was the first time for me where I thought, oh, this can actually be done this way as well. And the more videos I watched of yours, I thought, okay, this man is clearly being himself, and he's comfortable being himself. He's clearly a knowledgeable person. So this, you can be yourself while still representing the religion. And obviously we stay within our limitations. But I say that because a lot of the youth, they have this idea, especially if you're originally from the subcontinent, that if you are going to be involved in dawah in any way, if you are going to truly represent the religion, you have to be kind of always soft-spoken, you kind of have to be a little hunched over. I call it kind of, it's not really even humility, but it almost looks fake. And I always felt that there was some sort of a weakness in that. And it was your videos where I started thinking, oh, actually, because for my own personality, that's generally speaking, I'm not a very humble guy, if you will. But I realized after looking at yourself that, okay, he's confident for a reason because he has knowledge. So that means if you have proper knowledge, he's clearly within the bounds of Islam. I need to learn more about this so I can also be confident in my representation of the religion, which allows me to be more of myself while doing so. And I think that's very important. I think this is a gross misrepresentation when it comes to people who give dawah. So I think different personalities in the dawah sphere are very, very important. And also for all of them to be authentic, because people can sense if you're being authentic or not. They can sense if you're trying to put on something, if you're trying to have a certain kind of a personality, if you're an actor. And there are, of course, people in the dawah sphere who are very humble, who are the kind of people that I described. But if they are like that authentically, people can see that, and people know that, and people connect to that. And that's what I always say, that I think you need to lean more into who you are as a person while remaining within the bounds of Islam, and that attracts a certain kind of a person. You'll attract a certain kind of a person, I'll attract certain kind of people, Hassan will attract certain kind of people. And I think that's very important. Do you think the youth kind of still misunderstands that, if you're going to give dawah, you still have to be a certain kind of personality?
I think that's a really good assessment. I was listening to it attentively, and I think it's a very interesting assessment, because even growing up, I myself associated religiosity with this docile, placid kind of behavior that people do have. Like, almost always looking on the ground and, minding his own business, not getting involved in the big matters, almost like, And to be honest with you, that's not what I see Islam is all about. There's a beautiful hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ where he said that مَنْ خَالَطَ النَّاسِ وَصَبَرَ عَلَىٰ أَذَاهُمْ خَيْرٌ مِّنَ الَّذِي لَا يُخَالِطُ النَّاسِ وَلَا يَصْبِرُ عَلَىٰ أَذَاهُمْ أَوْ كَمَا قَالَ صلى الله عليه وسلم, which is that whoever mixes with the people and is patient on their tribulation is better than the one who doesn't do that. But if you want to mix with the people, you have to be able to be relatable to the people. If you're not relatable to the people, then how are you going to mix with them? And I've always, we've been in multiple different dawah organizations. Started them up, Salam, Aira, obviously Sapiens right now, but also related or connected with other ones. And part of my role has actually been bringing people to become the next du'at, or helping them with public speaking. That's a big part of my role, actually, if you think about it, right? I've helped people in debates, helped people in public speaking and stuff like that, and building confidence, and that's a big part of my role. And I have found that it's much easier to get somebody who's an extrovert, or someone who's good at public speaking, because it could be an introvert but good at public speaking, to learn the Islamic knowledge than the opposite. Someone who's good at the Islamic knowledge to learn how to be a good public speaker. It's because the Islamic knowledge, to get to a certain level on it, for example, it doesn't require that many years. 2 to 3 years, you can get to a decent level, frankly. Like 2 or 3 years of dedicated study, you can get to a pretty decent level. 3 or 4 years, you can get to almost competent level, if you take it seriously. But the public speaking thing, you can get someone who's of a certain disposition. It's very difficult to get them to actually be good at public speaking. If they don't have the disposition, or they don't have the relatability factor, if you like, the X factor. If they don't have the X factor, it's hard. It's really hard. It's like singing. It's just like singing. I used to watch when I was younger. I was like a kid. I used to watch Britain's Got Talent or X Factor and stuff like that. It's much easier to get someone who's a natural singer to sing within certain parameters and to do certain performances than it is to get someone he's not a natural singer, to learn how to sing. So public speaking is like singing, I think so. You need to have like a base. And so I agree with you, bro. Public speaking, relatability factor, whatever. The ones who are going to make it into the dawah, the social media dawah, are the ones who are able to combine those two things. The other ones, there are hundreds of thousands, there are actually millions of these students of knowledge across the world. They don't have what it takes to do this. And it's not because they could be ulama. We as a du'at can go to them and ask them for fatwa. They could make that. But this very specific social media kind of dawah requires a very specialized set of skills. A car salesman, or a lawyer would have the advantage here, for example. Do you see what I mean? Or an actor.
Yeah.
These kinds of things. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and it's just partly because of my personality and what I'm good at.
Yeah.
That's what I think. That's probably why it is the case. But in terms of Islamic knowledge, once again, if I were to value my Islamic knowledge compared to the average graduate from Azhar or Medina, I would see it as substandard actually. For example, frankly, if you put all the things that I've done in my life, maybe there's a few things there that one can make the argument, but I think generally speaking, it's that relatability factor that's made the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think this kind of leads into the topic that hopefully we'll be talking about later in Waterford today, kind of the ultimate purpose in life. I think that representation, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be different for different people. And I think for young people especially, I think they need to understand what they're good at, what their natural skills are, and they need to lean into that, because that is going to be their way into their own kind of dawah. I'm not just talking about the social media types, especially but there's going to be a different way. For example, you mentioned business and money. Some people are going to be very good at business, at money, nurturing those kind of relationships. When you lean into that, and people have to understand that, again, this is changing a little bit. But money, business, all this is valuable in the world, and this is valuable within religion as well. So this can be a way to also represent your religion to the non-Muslims also. Because what attracts the non-Muslims, right? In general, what attracts anyone is a certain level of competence in any sphere in life. Money, business, success, looks, physique, anything like that, intellect. So this is why I say it's very important to understand your skill, to lean into it. And with something like business and money, I think leaning into that even more is important, because it's so easily valued by and respected by everyone.
There's an interesting discussion by Ibn Taymiyyah about this, because there are two models that you see from the Sahaba. The first model you see of like Umar ibn Khattab, right? And when he went into Al-Quds, Jerusalem, he came in very humbly, and he was on the camel, and he came off the camel, let his slave go on the camel, and he was dressed in a very modest manner. And then you have the example of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, who was in fact quite lavish in his appearance. Like, he came across extremely, if you like, extravagant, some would say. But he's well presented, big palaces, big this and that. In fact, he offered justification for this, and he said that the reason is that the Romans and the Persians would consider us to be lesser than if we didn't do this. So Ibn Taymiyyah had a discussion about this, and he said the following. He said, so what is the right way then? Is it to be like to dress up in a humble manner and to not show your wealth? Or is it to show your wealth and to dress up in a, if you like, not extravagant manner, but in a way to indicate that this person is of a social standing? And what his conclusion is that sometimes it's better to do this and sometimes it's better to do that. You have to be versatile enough. So in some cases, this is justified. And in other cases, this is justified. In the first case, it's justified because we were in a position of strength. So, going into Jerusalem is already an expression of strength. So what seems more virtuous is to be extremely humble at that time, to show the combination of humility and strength together. Whereas in the case of Muawiyah, there was more of a conflict going on now. Now the Romans and the Persians had become brave. So in that situation, it could be argued that actually to show your wealth, and there is a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إن الله يحب أن يرى أثر نعمته على عباده, or كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, which is that Allah likes to see the effects of His blessings on His slave. And some scholars say about this particular hadith, it's talking about dressing properly, wearing things which are expensive. Some scholars say that. So I think that with this one, so for example, how I try and implement this is if I'm with, if you like, my people, if I go to Pakistan, if I go to Egypt, I'm Egyptian, or go to Morocco, and the people there are working class people, I'll dress up in a working class manner. I've got nothing to prove. I really don't. In fact, I prefer it like that. I don't like to. I'll wear whatever they're wearing, for example. However, if I'm going to speak to, I don't know, whoever it may be, right? I'll maybe wear a nice watch, wear good clothes, something like that. So it's more situational. Mm-hmm. One has to be, and look, Hajj is a great example, because in Hajj and Umrah, Allah wants everyone to be humble. Yeah. No one's going to wear nothing. Take your clothes off. You're going to wear the same clothes as you're going to wear when you're going to be dead. That's what you're going to wear, because here the emphasis is on humility. So I agree with you. I think that there is definitely a place for that, for the competence, but you have to be versatile enough also to be zahid as well. Mm-hmm. And there's times where the zuhd is actually required as well. In
terms of that humility and that even slavery before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is something that brings a person up in the sight of Allah and in the sight of the people. But that kind of slavery is only appropriate for Allah. So we don't show that level of submission towards any of the creation. That's not appropriate for that. And something that the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, mentioned, you can agree or disagree with his policies, but something that he tried to inculcate, particularly in the youth of Pakistan, was to do away with this mentality of being a slave to anyone except Allah, especially being a slave to the West or being answerable to the West. You have your own culture, you have your own religion, and that, from the point of view of the religion, that is better than any other way of life. You don't have anything to explain to anyone else. So from that perspective, he gave that what is appropriate for that the situation, that before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala you are humble, and that you don't try to prove yourself in that way in front of Allah. But there's also a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in which he is speaking to his uncle, and he's advising him to go on a particular expedition, and he says that I hope that you will get a lot of booty, a lot of wealth from this expedition. And I believe it was Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anh, and he responded that, Ya Rasulullah, I didn't accept Islam to get these benefits. I didn't accept Islam to become wealthy and to have all these blessings. The Prophet ﷺ, he responded to him and he said that how good ni'mal malu salih li rajulin salih, that how good is pure wealth with a pure individual, a pure man, a good man, that he has good wealth, pure wealth, as opposed to that money or that power, that influence being with someone who is corrupt. If that same wealth or power is with someone who is pious, that is only going to do benefits for a person. When it comes to the point of view of money, even if he just gives zakah, that is beneficial. And then of course he will give more as well, and he will have a positive influence.
I mean, there's an interesting book by Al-Ghazali, actually, in his Ihya al-Ulumuddin. He's written Ihya, and the Ihya is divided into 4 quadroons, and the last 2 quadroons, one of them is Al-Muhlikat, and then the final one is Al-Munjiyat, which Al-Muhlikat means the diseases of the heart, or the things that destroy you effectively. And Al-Munjiyat are the things which save you. Okay? And so obviously he's got a collection of books for each of those. Anyway, one of the books is about money. He does talk about money. And what's interesting is that he's got really sophisticated analysis about money, like love of money and stuff like that. The first thing he says is that human beings, and this is going to sound like almost a pseudo-evolutionary analysis, right? He goes, human beings are interested in the things that enhance their survival, okay? And so, for example, and he gives multiple examples of that, shelter, food, whatever. They love food because of food enhances your survivability. They love intercourse because that it's like procreation and stuff like that. So it's, they love this and that because, so that's the first thing he says. He says, money, it's reasonable for a human being to love money. And it's not problematic from one perspective because it enhances the survival of the human being, right? But then he starts talking about the excesses of it. So now if that love, which is a natural love and is an acceptable love, becomes too much now, and the person starts to really just chase money for money's sake, and he wants to be part of the rat race. I mean, he doesn't put it in this language, but then he starts talking about that becomes unpraiseworthy, especially in a capitalist society. We need to really be careful with this because there are, I would say, with money, with wealth, there are parts of it which, it's like fame or power. It can be praiseworthy, but it can be very addictive, and it can be very dangerous as well. And so one needs to realize that. And like, for example, I'll give you an example. I don't have that much money, but I'm more famous than I'm rich, in the sense that someone of my level of fame usually is a multi-millionaire, which I'm not. But let's say, for the sake of argument, when I meet somebody who knows who I am, like this morning I was in the hotel, I was eating my breakfast, and this guy came, he's non-Muslim. He said, I've been watching all of your videos. I was very surprised. He had tattoos all over his body. So let me take a picture with you. Okay, he took a picture with me, and I said, what's his name? And he gave me his name, and I waited for you in the lobby. But this particular person, okay, what's he taking a picture with, and why? Is he taking a picture with me, or is he taking a picture with my fame?
Right.
So if I was not famous, would he treat me in that same way? Would he speak to me in that same way? But it was a very beautiful moment in Pakistan. This was one of my most special moments in Pakistan, and you'd be surprised. Where we went to a mosque to pray, and there was like a madrasa going on at the same time. And there were these kids that were reading the Quran. They didn't know who I was. They didn't speak English, nothing. And I could see they didn't know. They were doing their thing. If they did know, they'd be standing up and trying to take pictures of me, whatever it may be. But when I was leaving the masjid, there was 2 of them, maybe, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old. I think this one was about 10-year-old. And he stood up and he, with the greatest respect, shook my hand and, showed me out. Now that was more special than, with all due respect, most people coming and asking for pictures, because he was doing it because of Allah.
Right.
He's been taught to do it, and because of who I was, he saw me as an elder in the community, and it wasn't due to my fame.
Mm-hmm.
And so I differentiate between people in my life who act with me in a certain way only due to my fame, and people who act with me despite it, and they can never be equal. That's why people who, before I became famous with part of my life, will always have, in a sense, a rank above, frankly, because you're doing it not due to my fame, but despite it, that you have this relationship with me. So money and fame are similar in that regard, because if a woman wants to marry a man because he's got lots of money, what is she actually marrying? Is she marrying him, or is she marrying his money? Is he his money? The question is a man his fame? Is a man his money? I want to put to you that a man is not his fame, a man is not his money, and a man is not his power. These are 2 things independent of each other. So if someone likes you because you're famous, or someone likes you because you're rich, or someone likes you because you're powerful, they don't actually like you. They like power, fame, and money. That's what they like. And because you can provide, you're a supplier. You're the drug supplier. The similitude of you is the same similitude of a drug dealer. You're a drug dealer. That's what you are. All you're doing is you're dispensing to certain people that which they like. They don't like you that much. They don't care about you. If you died, they wouldn't care. It's just the fact that they care about your fame, or your money, or your whatever it may be. So one has to be careful of that, because money, some people think, and it's a capitalistic mindset, that when you become more famous, or when you become more rich, or when you become more powerful, then you get everything you want in life. You get some of what you want in life, but you actually get a lot of liabilities as well. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what made him the greatest leader of all time, wasn't that he was offering money to people. It was that he was offering love to people. Love of Allah and love of himself. And the people loved him, and the people loved Allah, hence they would die for him. I was having a conversation one time with a person, and he was talking about the most influential people, and he was saying the best thing to do is just become a tycoon, and get money and all this kind of thing. Because look at for example, Colonel Saunders. He said, KFC, multiple branches. Look how much power this man has. This is what he was saying to me. I said, let's stick on your worldly and materialistic analysis for a second. Yeah. Let's stick on that analysis. Even with what you're saying, he's not the most powerful. Say, why? Say, are people working in KFC willing to take up arms and risk their lives and give their lives for Colonel Saunders? No. So objectively, he's not more powerful or more influential than somebody who has instilled love into somebody else. And there is a reciprocal relationship of love. And then that person he goes out and he would do anything for that person, you see. There is a film which I watched when I was younger, A Bronx Tale, I think it was called. I don't know if you watched this before. And it was Robert De Niro and this young man, okay? And this film was all about the following. This young man, he had 2 people, and the script writer was very clever, because he actually combined classical philosophy and literary marvel to produce this thing. Very interesting, the way it actually kind of unraveled, I think. Because the guy had the boy had 2 male role models. He had his own father, who was a hard-working, quote-unquote, hard-working man. He was working as a bus driver, Robert De Niro. And he had this other person, who was a mafia leader. He was offering money, he was offering status, he was offering prestige, and so on and so forth. And in fact, there was a key part of this film, which I won't forget, where he was asked, he said, would you rather be loved or would you rather be feared? This is what he said. And he responded in this film. He said, "I would rather be feared." That's what he said. That was his mentality. And then he actually quoted Machiavelli. Now, Machiavelli wrote this book called The Prince, and it was all about how to control people effectively. But it was for princes. He said, "I'd rather be feared." Now, near the end of the film, this mafia leader got shot and died. Now, everyone was there in his funeral, and they were literally just eating and drinking as if it was a party. No one cared about this guy. No one cried. There was not a tear that was shed. I think it was one or two people. Only the boy was affected by him dying. And the moral of the story is, when you build an empire on money, power, and fame, and dispensing these kind of things to people, it becomes a very fragile empire. It becomes very weak, and that's not the model of the Prophet Muhammad of leadership. He's not his model. His model was building love relationships. Now these people that are Machiavellian and that read 48 Laws of Power and Human Nature and Robert Greene's books. They're playing checkers. They are playing checkers, and they are playing checkers, bro. And this level where you're getting people, the best leverage is love. Getting people to love you and you love them and these kinds of things, and they have a cause, a transcendental cause, and that's chess now, high level chess. And so I do think that a lot of the things which we think is so required and stuff like that, it's just, we must be aware. A lot of it will just be because we have been, in a sense, brainwashed by the West, by the capitalistic enterprise and stuff like that. So we have to be careful. Because even if you do want to control people and have an empire and do this and do that, how many millionaires in the years 1980 to 2000 have made their mark on history? How many of them? Like big-time tycoons? Not really. Okay, in the 1600s, how many millionaires do we remember? None. But we all remember William Shakespeare, who died in 1603. He's on the notes. I opened up my passport. I saw his face on my passport, bro. What money did he? He wasn't like necessarily doing that for that reason. Bro, there are atheist philosophers, people like Spinoza, who literally had money and gave it away because for them they understood true legacy isn't in this. So what I'm saying is that we need to get it right. I mean, there's no problem having some money and using it and stuff like that and helping and charity but we need to kind of not be sucked into modern day, I think, conceptions of money, which is because there are lots of things in the hadith literature, for example, in the Quran, ta'isa abdu dinari wa dirham, that perished be the slave of a dinar and dirham, which also, as you'll see if you read that book on Ihya al-Muddin, about Al-Ghazali's discussion of money, for example, is unpraiseworthy, I would say. So one has to balance that one.
Definitely. There's a statement that I was aware of that goes along the lines of people will forget what you gave them or what you did with them, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So having that kind of influence, that kind of love, instilling those kind of emotions, that when you're mentioned in a gathering that people feel a certain way about you, whether that's love, whether that's hatred even, but to have that kind of indifference. In fact, in one of the podcasts I was watching of yourself, you mentioned, I believe it was a contemporary scholar who said that how unfortunate is a person that he doesn't have anything that no one is envious of. That you don't have anything that anyone wants from you. That no one wants anything from you. You don't have anything to offer. And so that balance is very important to strike within an individual, that you're acting appropriately for the circumstances, but also having a good and organic kind of balance within the community as well. So it's one thing that we're talking about outside of the Dawah sphere, and we see this kind of diversity even within the Sahaba as well. We didn't need all of the Sahaba to be extremely knowledgeable, that they were scholars of Islam, because we had individuals such as Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu who were extremely knowledgeable and they've spent much time with the Prophet ﷺ. We didn't need everyone to be extremely wealthy because we had individuals such as Uthman radiallahu anhu who would give without questioning and he would have a lot of wealth. So we have this diversity within the Sahaba as well, and everyone knew their role that they would play. And if we go into the example of the Dawah sphere, even the diversity within there, and it's important for young people especially because they look up to a particular role model online and they feel that this is Islam. This is the way that we practice the religion. For example, if they look at you, they see that this is the way that you have to be very confident, and you have your own personality as well. But they feel that they have a different kind of personality, but they have to force it, that this is the way that you have to approach it. But you mentioned one thing in one of your videos, that you are actually praising some of the other scholars or students of knowledge as well. And you mentioned that Dr. Yasir Qadhi by name, and you praised his Seerah playlist. You mentioned Dr. Omar Suleiman, and you praised his works as well. You mentioned Dr. Jonathan Brown, and you mentioned him as an A-grade academic. When you said that, even though there's difference of opinion and difference of approach, but coming from a person like you, it shows that it doesn't mean that you shun a person, they're not a Muslim, that you don't take anything from them. You take the good and you leave the bad. Or you take what is attractive to you and you leave what is bad. You don't need to engage your whole life in attacking a particular person. So even recently we had the opportunity to meet with Sheikh Omar Suleiman here in Ireland. We had an event with him in Dublin 2 weeks ago. And he came across, mashallah, as a very genuine individual. Yeah. The way that you see him
authentic.
Very authentic. And that's the main thing that we appreciate about these individuals. For example, Sheikh Abu Taymiyyah as well. Yeah. A very genuine individual. That genuineness and that authenticity is very important, and that shows when you interact with people. So the reason that I mentioned that is recently Lex Friedman, he mentioned that he wants to get a debate going on the issue of Palestine and Israel. And he mentioned a number of names that people would like to choose and vote. He mentioned Sheikh Omar Suleiman as one of them, and he also mentioned yourself as one of them. And I was thinking to myself, because he did have 2 podcasts with Sheikh Omar Suleiman, which did very well for the Muslims and for the community, for non-Muslims as well. And it's good for him to interact with a person like Lex, because he lets him speak and he can speak without being interrupted. But when he mentioned the topic of debate, I didn't want that for someone like Sheikh Omar Suleiman, because his personality, first of all, is different, but also he's a particular image within the Muslims, within the non-Muslims, that isn't suited for a debate kind of situation, especially on that kind of topic. It's good for him to be in an interview situation like with Lex. And we were talking to him about this, and he said that for these kind of situations, I want to push people like Mohammed Hijab. We mentioned that you were going to be here. And it makes sense, because you have that personality and you have expertise in those particular fields. So again, having that kind of diversity and knowing your
and the
role
fact that he says something like that, Omar Suleiman, shows that he doesn't feel threatened by me,
right?
Which is actually excellent, because a lot of people, how does jealousy work? Jealousy usually works when you have people in the same sector or in the same industry doing the same thing from the same family. There's got to be some kind of common pathway, could be from the same ethnicity, who compare themselves with other people and they feel threatened by someone else. And that's the key thing. So the fact that he was able to say that, on this point, by the way, on the point of the debate, I don't think I would have been the best person for it. In fact, I put myself, Norman Finkelstein, as the best person for that particular debate, because he, in many ways, he's the one that we get all the information from anyway, in terms of actual scholarship. He's probably one of the top 3 or 4 scholars that we take information from. So, and also he has a style, a professorial style, which I think is suited for these kinds of situations. He recently had a debate with Unholy Shmoli, and it went very well. In many ways, he's done many of the things I couldn't do. I was obviously more entertaining and stuff like that, comedic. But he was just, very professorial, very stoic about it. And I learned many things from that style. In terms of dealing with the questions at hand, he's been doing this for 4 years. He's been doing it for longer than I've been alive. So I think it's only right. If he and I are on the same list, it would be improper for me to put myself forward. It would be disrespectful and improper. So on the point is, I think that Omar Suleiman, he understands his own strength. Because you mentioned that I'm one of the big names of the dawah. He's also one of the biggest names in the dawah. And he understands what he's good at. And he is, and I've spoken to him personally about this, I consider him to be a world-class speaker. I consider him to be a world-class speaker. I consider him to be someone who knows how to communicate in certain contexts in a very proficient and articulate way. Him and Yasir Qadhi, the same thing can be said about Yasir Qadhi, in fact. And Yasir Qadhi's got, some serious scholarship backing in that field as well. So these people, are doing great work. Okay, obviously there's going to be problems. Everyone's going to say, well, he said this and she said this. Well, I've said things as well. My ultimate assessment of most people in the dawah that are on that level is that they are clearly on that level for a reason, and that they are catering to a particular audience. And that audience is being nourished by whatever it is that they're bringing forward. And that this is not some kind of zero-sum game between us, that we have to refute each other. And maybe it's a correction here and there if things get out of hand and if the approaches become a bit too disparate. And fine, they can correct me, I can correct them. And there have been some of that. But in terms of full-out refutation and, trying to cancellation and stuff like that, it's not my prerogative with these people. My prerogative is to rectify, not to nullify and to cancel. So all of these figures that you've mentioned, they have done excellent work. And I think that their ultimate sincere objective is to improve the cause of Islam and to raise the kalima of Allah. And they have been some of the most effective people. And if you look at their libraries, like Noman Ali Khan, for example, once again, some people are saying, well, he's come out and said this and he said that, the other. And he has said some things which are extremely questionable. I'm sure he has. I haven't even looked at most of them, just like myself or anybody else. But look at the good that the man has put forward. If you look at what he's done in terms of Quran translation into the English language, sorry to say, there's nobody, I don't think, in the last 30 to 50 years who's done anything better than him. In terms of as a medium or an interface, social media, and using an auditory thing. He's actually quite proficient in the Arabic language. And his products are very easily graspable, understandable, and digestible by a mass audience. So all of these people have their place. And if I could press a button to either keep or remove them, I would press the button to keep every single one of them. Some people would press the opposite button. And I think those people that press the opposite button, there's a question mark on their actual prerogatives, frankly, and their psychological states and their personal beefs and stuff like that. Because, frankly, what must be admitted is that you can't be the guy that everyone likes. You can't be the product that everyone consumes. You have to admit that. You have to admit, people are going to like that style, and people are going to like this style, and people are going to like that style, and some people are going to like a bit of combination of all. Some people, that person's unwatchable. Some people say Mohammed Hijab is an unwatchable guy. Braggadocious is too much, rambunctious, is unwatchable. And some people say, no, actually, this is exactly what I like. It's enjoyable, it's entertaining, it's charismatic, which is the correct opinion. But then we'll look at someone like Omar Suleiman and say that is unwatchable because, he's too soft, he's too whatever. So that you're always going to find people that different strokes for different folks. So for me, the more the merrier.
Exactly, yeah. I will tell you a personal anecdote that I had in relation to Noman Ali Khan when I was younger. When I was around 14, 15 years old, and I feel it's very important for me to mention this personal anecdote because a lot of Muslims, young Muslims, especially around that age, they don't know what to take, what's correct, what's wrong. But when it comes to people online, within the Muslim Dawah sphere as well, or the Muslim reputational sphere, it seems like, okay, this is true. Of course, you're bringing all the references, you're bringing all the arguments, and this person reaches the level that he's not a Muslim. It's not one thing that he's not scholarly. It reaches that level that he's a Muslim. He's not a Muslim, and he's an anti-Muslim agent, and on and on. When I was around that age, and I started watching these refutations of Noman Ali Khan, it was very difficult for me myself. And for someone like us, we were raised, alhamdulillah, in a very a very practicing household, a very easygoing household, a very practical household, alhamdulillah, where we didn't have any kind of animosity towards the religion. We were father of the Quran. And alhamdulillah, we definitely had that advantage, which many Muslims don't. We had that advantage, but still, those kind of influences are very strong for young Muslims. When I started watching that, I was like, oh my God, I'm going down the incorrect route. This is going to be something very terrible for myself if I continue watching such an individual. Then I decided, okay, I got actually a subscription to a Billion Institute, and I started following some of his content. And I said, okay, he teaches Arabic. Hopefully that should be okay, that it's a language, it's not Aqidah or anything. So I continued with the Arabic. Then later on, when I started following Yasir Qadhi, and he started bringing the evidences. And okay, there's one opinion about this, there's another opinion here, and he brings the evidences. And I was like, okay, this isn't, you can say anything that you want about Yasir Qadhi, fair enough, but he isn't speaking about himself. He's saying that this scholar says this scholar says this, and there's this diversity of opinion. This coming from a person like you, it shows that within that Dawah sphere, there isn't that kind of, you're not at each other's necks, and it is important to have that kind of camaraderie and knowing your positions and your roles in that position. So something that we try to encourage on our podcast as well is you can listen to many people, you can take the good and you can leave the bad, but don't be at a level that you tell people that don't listen to such a person or don't do this, because that reaches the level that you break Muslims, and the one connection that a young Muslim has to Islam, whether that's, for example, Norman Ali Khan,
Mufti Menko.
Mufti Menk, for example, a very influential individual. If you break that, then Islam is completely gone from his life.
Yeah, I mean, some people just love listening to Mufti Menk. And so you say to them, well, he's a mubtada. He is, I don't know what it is, he's an innovator. And so this layperson who's watching Mufti Menk, extremely beneficial lectures and talking about, I don't know, whatever it may be, the stories of the prophets or something like that. I've seen one or two of his videos on that topic. Very interesting, very nice the way he puts it. And they're loving it. They're loving how he's talking. They're loving how he's describing it, how he's reciting the Quran. He's a brilliant reciter of the Quran, actually. Probably one of the best in the da'wah, frankly. His voice is actually like qari. And so they like his presentation, for example. They like how he looks and coming across with the white thing, and very, people love it. And now you've told him this guy is not the one. So what have you done to this? So this guy's gone back to watching whatever it is that he was watching before. So I think there's different strokes for different folks. Like Abdul Hakim Murad, for example.
Yes.
I mean, I doubt that some urban revert from Brixton, London, is watching him.
Right.
I doubt it. I mean, if I were to see his demographics, and maybe he should make himself more versatile to this audience. However, he's got his own niche, which happened to be, middle class, Britishers at a certain level who understand certain parlance, right? And they love it. It's like a fine wine. Like watching him is like drinking a fine wine.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, halal one, right? Non-alcoholic
Grape
one.
juice.
For them, they love his analysis.
Yeah.
And interweaving and interlacing, aspects of modernity. And he had a good lecture called "The Tiger of Modernity," for example. Fantastic analysis. People love it. And so, if you tell this guy who's into that, watching The Tiger of Modernity, and to go and watch, I don't know, Khalid Yassin, who's a phenomenal speaker. Anyone can say anything. This guy, he rivals Malcolm X on his oratory. I mean, his power, he's a powerhouse, especially as Prime. When he was, go and ask him to watch Khalid Yassin. He might not like that. He wants to hear more someone speaking in a professorial tone, talking about the Tiger of Modernity. But then if you tell the Brixton guy to go and watch this guy, he'll say, what the hell are you telling me to watch? You know? So there has to be, this diversity in the da'wah. Religion, the beautiful thing about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the amazing thing, is that he would be versatile enough to go to a Brixton audience, and he would be versatile enough to go to the middle class audience. He'd be versatile enough to go to this one. That level of versatility I mean, is what made him the top orator. Because what is it to be a top orator? That you can speak to as many and as wide an audience as possible. Males, females, youngsters, people of all ages. And that's what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ represented. He did represent that. He could catch as many people as possible with his speech. But all of these other people that I've just mentioned, they really appeal to certain demographics within the Muslim world. They really do. And to then cut these people off from people that would then affect them, I think it's problematic, to say the least.
The last topic we'd like to address with yourself is what you think is the future of the Dawah sphere. And in particular, recently in a podcast in Pakistan, you were talking about the importance of Muslim influencers and Muslims getting into production and filmmaking. So this is something that we have planned, inshallah, for the Ali brothers as well, that we promote this kind of activity as well, that we have something that is done with high production value with our own community here in Ireland, and we train them, that we have these kind of interesting well-developed films, and perhaps we can have nasheeds and we can fund these
studio perhaps even.
Exactly. We were thinking of this idea of the Ali Brothers Studios, and we have that kind of niche as well for people, because this is something that isn't really tapped into quite a bit yet by the Muslims. The importance of having high production value, and you were with Youth Club in Pakistan, which they have very good equipment, very good quality of not only content, but the actual production value is very good, and that's very attractive. That's very good for people to easily listen to and watch. So in terms of that, in terms of the future of films, and in terms of the future of Dawah, what would you like to see in the future in that regard?
Yes, well, we're going to try and do a few things. So we'll show you proof of concept, but in terms of actually putting this together, I say that if one wants to actually get involved in this kind of thing, they need to do it professionally, which means to say that they need to actually get people from the industry to take control of something like this. You cannot do this yourself. Yeah. It's not a DIY thing. It's like, you guys are doctors. It's as sophisticated as anything else. It's like, you need to have a script writer who's a professional script writer. You need to have a director who's a professional director. You need to have an entire team. Even the actors that get involved need to be professional actors, preferably with some kind of experience. Because if you want to get involved in the industry, this kind of industry, we really need to make sure that we're, on the same standard as all the alternatives and the competitors. So I think it all really starts with a great script. That's where it all starts. The films that have made it to the top are the films with the greatest script. That's really what it is. And it's those films which, it's not necessarily the films with the most money put into them. That's not the case. You can have a film which has a much lower production value, but with an impeccable script, which would be more successful than a film or a series with the opposite of that. So the script is the most important thing that you can have in this thing, and that needs to be worked on. And that's why you'll find a lot of the series and the films which do the best are in fact based on novels and well thought about scripts. So that's what I would say. Start off with that and get the job done professionally. You need to have a good budget. You can't really do much with less than 100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, that's a very low budget. But you can't do anything without that. So you need to get the funding for that. But you can't even do anything without that much money.
Yeah.
So you need to have a budget in place. You need to have the script in place. You need to have the actors in place. You need to have production. And then I think it's from then on out, it's proof of concept. Let's see what works. Let's try different things now and see what happens.
Inshallah, Jazakallah khair. We hope that we can definitely play our part in this kind of situation. We hope that we can be part of the team with the Sapiens and the influencers that you have within the UK to come together and to start something novel, and inshallah something that is new and people can relate to. Brother Hijab, if there was one question you would ask the Prophet ﷺ, what would that be?
It would be it would be about Islamic unity, because if I got the answer to that question, I can do the action that can save the ummah. Okay. And it's a question that he's already been asked. But I'd just ask again. I'd explain the context. Say we're living in an age where this is it. There's 2 billion of us now, and all that kind of thing. And first of all, these are the different creeds. Tell us what the right creed is. Once and for all. And secondly, even if they're not coming together on that creed, what shall I do? And then he will tell me. He'll tell me the answer to that question. And those two answers resolve everything. I mean, all the problems in the Ummah.
Absolutely. What a question.
Yeah.
Brother Hijab, you've been very generous with your time. I'd just like to request one final thing of you. We really appreciate the way that you recite the Quran. You have a very powerful, a very melodious, a very gripping method of our style of reciting Quran. And that was also shown in that debate with David Wood. We would like you to recite a portion of the Quran, if you wouldn't mind, to close this beautiful podcast for us.
Okay, inshallah, no problem. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إليه يرد علم الساعة وما تخرج من ثمرات من أكمامها وما تحمل من أنثى ولا تضع إلا بعلمه ويوم يناديهم أين شركائي قالوا آذناك ما منا من شهيد وضل عنهم ما كانوا يدعون من قبل وظنوا ما لهم من محيص لا يسأم الإنسان من دعاء الخير وإن مسه الشر فيئوس قنوط ولئن أذقناه منا رحمة من بعد ضراء مسته ليقولن هذا لي وما أظن الساعة قائمة ولئن رجعت إلى ربي إن لي عنده للحسنى فلننبئن الذين كفروا بما عملوا ولنذيقنهم من عذاب غليظ وإذا أنعمنا على الإنسان أعرض ونأى بجانبه وإذا مسه الشر فذو دعاء عريض قل أرأيتم إن كان من عند الله ثم كفرتم به من أضل ممن هو في شقاق بعيد سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق أولم يكف بربك أنه على كل شيء شهيد ألا إنهم في مرية من لقاء ربهم ألا إنه بكل شيء محيط.
Jazakallah khairan. Very powerful recitation, very powerful verses. SubhanAllah. May Allah accept the work that you do, Brother Hijab. May Allah accept the work that we do and the work that we intend to do, inshallah, for the Muslim Ummah. Jazakumullah khair, and we hope to see you back with us very soon again in the country of Ireland. Jazakumullah khair. And we will see you again for another podcast very soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.